Greetings and salutations, I'm Kev. Welcome back to this Let's Play of Outpost 2 Divine Destiny. Now let's see, where were we? Just finished mission 8, so it's time for story time again. Start with the mission briefing. Commander, our starship development is progressing, but we are missing some key components. Patrol units have located another debris fields from the Conestoga that may yield the information we need. A convoy will attempt to recover the wreckage we need. Use the scouts to scan the wreckage site for any pieces that are not already identified. And when they are marked, move a cargo truck to the location to load the wreckage. Bring the loaded cargo trucks back to the convoy's starting point. Plymouth appears to be preparing their own spaceship, and their raid on our colony shows how unbalanced they have become. They will be in the vicinity as well and may show hostile intent. Based on observations in the recent raid on our base, Plymouth seems to have developed several units and weapon capabilities. Respond accordingly, but remember that recovering the wreckage is our primary objective. See the specific objectives list for additional information. Here we go, we're already starting to design our little spacecraft. Return the 4 spacecraft parts to the convoy's starting location. Okie dokie. Of course, there is a story to be read. 9. Investigation. Brooke was getting to be good at stealing vehicles. He was getting a lot of practice. Lately. He was even getting the hang of the manual controls that all Eden vehicles were equipped with as an emergency measure, but which were otherwise rarely used. The tiller bounced in his gloved hand, and he applied a little right pressure to avoid a fresh meteor crater. As the cargo truck bounced its way around the backside of the rare ore melter, where it would be shielded from any curious eyes back at Eden, he wondered again if he should really be going along with this plan. Actually, he had no idea what the plan was. He knew only the explicit instructions Echo had given him, and he'd followed them to the letter. Axon's clandestine messages had encouraged him to cooperate. Axon seemed to think that the Masters had bigger secrets to hide than he knew, and that this might provide them with new leads. He spotted a suited figure that had to be Echo standing at the building's base in a shadow, a small setback like a cave in its vast silver cliff. He braked the truck to a sliding stop that threw him forward against his straps. He muttered to himself as he shut down the power system and locked the parking brakes. The hatch slid open immediately. He hadn't bothered to pressurize the cabin when leaving the Gorf, and Echo climbed up the broad steps. He could see her smiling behind her visor. "I really didn't think you'd do it. You aren't quite the bad boy you make yourselves out to be. Maybe I just got you fooled about the bad boy part. I'm here, aren't I? Besides, you told me you just want to borrow this, though I'd still like to know why you want to borrow the cargo. In the trailer was a battle-damaged Lynx. Its turret destroyed during the last skirmish with Plymouth. The rest of the chassis badly damaged. It had been bound for metal recycling when Brooke had intercepted it. About the only possible use he could think of it for it was as ballast." Echo shook her head. "I'm not ready to trust you with all our secrets yet. You keep providing things we need and we'll talk about it, but not today. Just trust me on this one, and I'll be much more inclined to trust you in the future." She shook her head back towards the power plant. "Out! There's a scooter back in the recess you can use to get back to the colony." Reluctantly, he climbed out as she slid past and into the seat. Her hands ran over the controls with a familiarity he'd never felt when driving. Where had she gotten the chance to practice that? "Looks good. I'm out of here." He kept his perch on the steps. "Wait, when will you be back?" She considered his question for a moment before answering. "About 20 hours for my business plus travel time. Call it 35 hours. 40 tops. You said nobody will notice the truck is missing. Operation thinks it's in the garage. The garage thinks it's part of the Starship salvage convoy. The truck that's actually in the convoy was rotated out of ore hauling, and when you bring back this truck, it will replace it. As long as you beat the convoy back, there won't be a problem, but I can't hide it forever. Same with that junker in the bed. Since the mine colony scandal, there are much closer tabs kept on recycled items and total output. You'll get your salvage back, pound for pound. Now, the sooner I roll, the sooner I'm back. Off. He stepped down and away from the truck and watched as it accelerated smoothly, turned and used the power plant as cover, headed out into the foothills, into thousands of miles of nothing as far as Brooke knew. But somewhere out there, 7.5 hours away, was something, a destination. That would be what Axon was trying to uncover, but not if Brooke could uncover it first. Axon leaned back in his chair and contemplated the array of pictures, lists and documents that Craft was displaying on his apartment's big intercom screen. His goal was to identify the masters and their resources, not at all an easy task. Although the group had technically gone public, only Echo of all the core members had publicly identified herself. The rest were hidden, and their anonymity made them especially dangerous. There were others who identified themselves as part of the group, but they were newcomers and hangers-on, seduced by Echo and Dozier's rhetoric, and who knew little of the group's actual agenda or activities. With the exception of Van Dozier, if they loudly proclaimed their membership, they weren't of interest to Axon. That left Echo, the 3 goons she'd brought with her when she'd attempted to recruit Panati, and a few more that he'd identified since. For these few, Axon had names, pictures, information. The rest, however many there might be, were a mystery, and a difficult mystery at that. But Axon had been luckier in tracking down deceased members. Many of those who had been at the mining outpost had been sent there because of probable association with the Masters, Vox Borgs being one of them. Axon still wasn't sure if Borg's attempt to kill him had been initiated by the Masters, or if Borgs had struck a deal with the now deposed council. There had been others, some of whom had been identified as having died in accidents, some Axon had ruled out as active members for one reason or another, and 3 who were simply missing. These 3 were also identified as having been killed in an accident, but unlike the others, no remains had been identified. Curiously, despite their newfound power, the Masters had not protested or called for further investigation. Axon walked up to the screen, took out a data pen and wrote next to the 3 names, "Dead?" ? He considered this for a moment, then wrote above the names, "Loose cannons." But if these 3 weren't dead, where were they? From there, Axon had set Craft investigating the dispensation of everything from the mining outpost. Again, there were curious holes. Most of its resources, units and buildings were listed as abandoned in place, unsalvageable. Yet a count taken from satellite photos didn't jibe with the inventory. A handful of items were unaccounted for, including a robominer, a convec, a command center kit, and a laser guard post. A Lynx total during the Plymouth raid on the outpost was also unaccounted for, though its hulk should still be on the battlefield where it had been disabled. He looked at the short row of pictures at the top of the display. Thanks to Panati, he knew at least these few for sure. Craft ran up a profile on all these, up to and including their current work assignments and whereabouts. Certainly, Axon. There was a pause. Preliminary report is in your clipcom. I'm attempting to create a deductive profile from less direct sources. Craft, I taught you well. It's good to have you back. Scanned the list quickly. G. Atolo was a scientist currently working on agricultural research. Sharon McComb worked in a garage. The others were an unexceptional list, not working common jobs in less than key locations. The one oddity was Jack Barr, who was on disability leave from his job in the vehicle factory. Panati hadn't mentioned any obvious infirmity. Axon tapped the name on his clipcom. Craft, give me more on this. He is listed as having been injured in a robotic malfunction 3 weeks ago, confined to bed. I find a listed emergency response of that description on that date, but indirect information causes me to suspect that record. Is he in his quarters? Probable. On what do you base that? Service logs show appropriate drains on life support. There are ongoing records of communications activity, computer use, changes in electrical power demand, all consistent with occupation. His ration points have been used to purchase meals in his residence. Axon chewed his fingertip nervously. He could think of ways to fake all those things. What about his luxury ration points? They have been used also. Where? Three different recreational facilities, the consumer goods factory, several public eating places around the colony. Axon smiled. They'd done a good job, but somebody had gotten greedy. If Bar wasn't around to use his luxury points, why should they go to waste? But an invalid wouldn't be spending them all over the station. So, where was Bar? With all the other missing items? With the other masters supposedly dead? Possibly, but it was too soon to jump to such conclusions. His clipcom chimed softly, and a message icon flashed at the upper corner of the screen. Answer visual, he said. The face that appeared on the screen was Zek Altsen, son of one of his fellow elders, and a member of the new Senate. Zek nodded respectfully, though the two of them were hardly strangers. Elder, the chairman wishes to see you in a personal meeting. There's a favor to be asked. Axon raised an eyebrow. This was unexpected. Care to save me the suspense and tell me what this is about, Zeke? I don't know exactly, Elder. It is my understanding that they want you to act as some kind of diplomat. Brooke sat in the now familiar alcove under the edge of the rear ore melter, watching waves of dust blow past the opening. He was sitting on bare ground, and despite the suit's insulation and heaters, his butt was getting cold. He looked out at the chrono display on his helmet's heads-up display. Where was she? He leaned forward and watched the thin, high clouds moving across the sky at a frightful pace. New Terra's weather had become increasingly erratic, in part because of the thicker atmosphere and the change in the gases making it up, in part because of this volcanic activity in the Blight-infected areas. The thin, dry air had begun to spring new surprises on Eden scientists. Dry lightning storms, apparently caused by static electricity, had begun to appear on the outskirts of the colony, as well as dangerous funnel clouds the scientists had dubbed vortices. Every time the scientists came up with a weather model that worked, the environment changed enough to render it invalid, making their forecast almost useless. There were no serious storms forecast for today, but his gut told him otherwise. He didn't want to be caught alone on the surface with only a suit and a scooter. Something in the distant wind-blown clouds, wind-blown dust, caught his eyes. And nothing more than a slight thickening in the cloud. He watched carefully. Yes, dust kicked up by our vehicle. He stood, brushed hopefully at the dust covering his suit, and finally settled on getting his visor relatively clear. He stepped from his shelter and actually felt the wind tugging at him. At this pressure, that meant the wind had to be moving at 120 kilometers per hour or better. Yikes. That's pretty fast. As he watched the truck getting closer, he saw another thickening in the dust, and at first thought it was a second vehicle. Then the funnel pulled reddish soil up its otherwise invisible length, like a child sucking orange juice through a straw. Vortex! He eyed the truck warily and wondered if Echo had seen the funnel. The vortex was perhaps 700 meters behind her, and might be hidden from her view by the cargo box. If she checked the rear view cameras, she'd see it, but there was little reason to do so in the open desert. As he watched the seconds tick by in the corner of his eye, he tried to judge the movements of both the truck and the vortex. If it didn't speed up in its lazy weaving dance across the desert, she'd beat it here easily. He could get in the cab to heck with the scooter, and they could make a run for the safety of the nearest garage. Then another discomforting thought occurred to him. What if she saw the vortex and didn't stop? It would be quicker to make a straight run for the garage, and Brooke had no way of judging if she cared at all for his life, and if she would consider him valuable enough to take a risk in rescuing. Quickly he surveyed the surroundings. There was a service access door a few meters up. It would be locked, but Brooke had a hacked keycard that might contain an override that would work. He watched the truck grow closer, as did the vortex, which had grown dark and tall, the slow, fuzzy column of its funnel tightening down in a smooth, thin, writhing snake. Brooke knew what that meant, that a faster inner column of spinning air was forming, a corkscrew of wind so fast it had never been measured, such a focused stream of destructive force that scientists jokingly called it an air laser. Yikes. The truck at first seemed to be taking a wide arc around the melter, but then it turned toward him, seemingly in no great hurry. The vortex was getting closer, its funnel whipping back and forth now, like the tail of some angry beast. Hurry! She couldn't have spotted the vortex. She was loafing along at nowhere near the truck's top speed. Frag! The vortex was going to overrun her before she got here. Quickly, he ran back to the scooter and hopped on. He gunned the throttle and the fat tires kicked up a rooster tail of dust that the wind sucked away greedily. He had to make it to her first. He ran the bike flat out, the tires slipping from the side to side in the loose sand, gusts of wind trying to knock him off balance. The vortex loomed over the truck like a giant about to stomp on an ant. He laid the bike over on its side without slowing down, slid to a stop in the truck's path, praying that a sharp rock didn't split open his suit. The truck veered to avoid him, slowing enough that he was able to jump onto the step and grab hold of the door grab handles as it opened. He threw himself inside. Echo glanced over. "Brooke, are you out of your mind? Turn right, hard, vortex!" She looked shocked, but she didn't hesitate, and the truck slid around in a tight turn. Brooke glanced at the rearview screen and saw his scooter, half flattened by one of the truck's tires, nearly disappear in the clouds of dust at the funnel's base, then reappear as an explosion of fragments that went in all directions, as though it had been blown apart with a grenade. Faster! But it was too late. The truck, already off balance from the tight turn, was hit by the vortex, which tried unsuccessfully to lift it into the sky. Instead, the truck began to roll slowly, first up onto its side, then completely over. Brooke, not being strapped in, landed in a heap on the cabin ceiling. The whole cab bucked and shuddered as though it were being torn from the truck, then dropped to the ground with a crash. Brooke rolled over onto his belly and looked out the window. The huge base of the funnel had moved past them, but then it paused in its drunkard's walk and started moving back toward them. He reached back and pulled the emergency release on Echo's harness, catching her as she fell free and immediately tugging her out the door. The funnel was coming at them fast now. If it had hit the cab with them still in it, he was certain they'd have been killed. Of course, if it caught them out in the open, they'd be just as dead. Brooke glanced at the overturned cargo box. A small depression in the ground had created an opening under its lip that might be just large enough to crawl into. He dragged the dazed Echo toward it. It was too loud to hear. It was too loud to hear her or even tell if their radios were still working. He shoved her towards the opening, and she got the idea. He crouched next to her and helped push her through the tight space. The vortex was almost upon them now. Brooke climbed into the opening, digging his way frantically into the dark space with hands and feet. He slipped into the tight space between the cargo box and its combat vehicle cargo, but Echo was nowhere to be seen. Then her helmet light flashed from the other end of the box, and he saw her waving him frantically that way. He scrambled on hands and knees toward her, and she motioned him towards an engine cover on the back of the combat unit. Of course, the links might be heavy enough to resist the vortex. The cover hung loosely by one corner, and there was just enough room in the motor bay for the two of them to squeeze inside. He jammed his back against the bulkhead and braced his feet. He glanced over at Echo. If he'd wanted to be rid of her, he'd missed a perfect chance. And now his attempted rescue might end up costing him his own life. The roaring outside reached a crescendo, and their dark hiding place was suddenly flooded with light and dust as the truck bed lifted away. The links shook, seemed to lift slightly in the air, made a 180-degree turn, and then dropped back to the dirt. The roar faded, and Brooke caught a glimpse of the vortex withdrawing into the sky. Suddenly claustrophobic, he leaped out of the hatch and ran a few meters before falling down into the dust. Echo staggered out, walked over and plopped down beside him. She laughed. "Guess this truck is out of the books for good, eh?" He laughed too, more from relieved tension than anything else. Then he noticed something about the links. It was hard to be certain with it sitting upside down, but he was relatively sure he was right. It was the same turret that had left Eden hours before, but the chassis was different. Oh, it was the same model, and it was combat damaged, but the damage was much more extensive, and in different places. Somebody had swapped the trashed turret onto an even more trashed body, and shipped it back. Why? He looked over at Echo, who made eye contact, a big smile on her face. His heart sank. He just saved her life. Would he be able to do whatever was necessary when the time came? Axon sat down at one end of the empty Senate table facing the big screen set up at the other end. For the first time in decades, he would have a legitimate legal communication with Plymouth. Give it to the chairman when it comes to survival issues. The bases are covered. In secret, even as the shooting war was heating up, lines of communication had been opened with Plymouth, and the stage set for negotiations. Not to end the fight, but to ensure the safety and survival of Plymouth's human gene bank. Axon had been reluctant to step into the role of negotiator, but the chairman had insisted that he was especially qualified, and had granted him significant powers. It was just possible that he might be able to accomplish something here today. He'd spent the last 10 hours researching the situation, developing various proposed agreements that would allow for the transfer of the gene bank when Eden completed its starship. He felt confident that he was ready to deal with any situation. Then the screen lit, and Emma's face looked back at him. Her expression was blank. This was obviously less of a surprise for her than for him. Axon, she said, it's been a long time. Which, officially, it had been. Even unofficially, it had been long enough. Emma, they hadn't told me that my counterpart in Plymouth would be. This is a surprise. I see that, and yet somehow I think I know exactly what you want. That's playing it a little close to the surface, Emma. We have to be discreet for both our sakes. We're looking for a guarantee that the gene bank will be transferred to us if it's clear that Plymouth will not finish its starship in time. In return, we will guarantee the safety of the gene bank if it's placed in a designated and marked non-strategic structure, and that Eden will be allowed to depart unmolested if its ship is finished first. She nodded while keeping her eye contact. We're prepared to discuss it, Axon. Though you know some things are non-negotiable. Something on her desktop caught her eye. She touched an icon and a document appeared. She read it quickly, and her jaw dropped, then clinched shut as she looked up at him, eyes burning like coals. She looked at someone off camera and said, "Bring him in." She turned back to him, looking no less angry. "How could you? What were you trying to accomplish? Steal it or just locate it for future reference, in case you didn't agree to steal our gene bank on the outside of the building?" He shook his head in puzzlement. "Emma, I have no idea what you mean. What happened?" "I hope you're telling the truth, Axon, but it makes no difference in the outcome of our talks today. As of now, they're over." She glanced back at two uniformed men dragging a third man into camera range. The man's wrists were cuffed behind him, and the guards stood on either side holding him up. A large bruise stained one side of his face. "We found him in a restricted area adjacent to where the gene bank is stored. Do you know this man, Axon?" Unfortunately, he did. The man on screen was Jack Barr. And there we go. Oh, and that was quite the long story. Yeah, I think we're actually going to take a break here before we actually start the mission. So we'll do that. Thank you for listening.